Om Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharmaswarupine avatara varishtaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha. O Ramakrishna, the establisher of the eternal religion, the embodiment of all religions, the best of all incarnations, we salute thee. In the last class, we stopped reading at page 607 of this book, Ramakrishna the Great Master, Volume 1. We shall continue from there today. So we remember that Sri Ram, the author, was discussing Sri Ramakrishna's, the mood of a spiritual teacher, how it developed from the early stages to the perfect stage of a world teacher, and how Mathur Babu saw the development it by stage. So it was there we had left. Now we shall continue the topic. Mathur had a fair knowledge of English, and he acquired not a small amount of that peculiar idea of independence, namely that he was not an insignificant man but equal to any other, which is the product of the Western education. Western temperament and manner of thinking. Therefore, we find Mathur trying to dissuade the master with the help of persuasion and argument from going far along the path, including to mental derangement due to an exuberance of love of God. So, though he considered master as his guru, he was persuading him, trying to advise him on this matter. A conversation between the master and Mathur on whether God has to obey his own laws as regards natural phenomena may be mentioned as an example of it. How Mathur Babu argued with his master himself. The master said once, Mathur was of the opinion that God had also to obey his own laws. Even he had not the power to overrule the laws that govern this whole universe. So even God has to follow that. Though God is the creator of this universe, but God has also to follow, because no law in this world can be transgressed. It cannot be just broken just like that by anybody, any big power. So God also, however big power he is, he has also to obey the laws of the universe. That was Mathur's argument. Mathur was of the opinion that God had also to obey his own laws. Even he had not the power to overrule the laws. He had once made this statement. Then Sri Ramakrishna says, I said, what do you mean? He who makes a law can as well unmake it also, if he so desires, or replace it by another law. He would by no means accept this. Mathur would not accept this argument of the master. He said, a plant producing red flowers invariably produces red ones and never a white one. For it is his law. It is his law, God's law. Well, let him, if he can produce a white flower in a plant bearing red ones. I said, Sri Ramakrishna says, he can, if he wills, do everything including that which you are saying. But he did not accept the proposition. The next day I went to answer a call of nature towards the cluster of tamarisk trees, when I found that in 2 twigs of one and the same branch of a red China rose plant, there were 2 flowers, one red and other brilliantly white, without a tiniest red spot in it. No sooner had I seen them than I broke the branch together with the two flowers, brought it and placed it before Mathur and said, "Here you are." Mathur saw and then said, "Yes, Father, I am defeated." Mathur sometimes believed that physical illness produced in the master a sort of mental derangement which manifested itself as devotional feelings in excess, and tried by reasons and argument to turn that mood of the master away. Thus, the worldly-minded Mathur would, it is clear, spend a long time with him thinking and discussing a great deal about his condition, partly out of curiosity, partly out of kindness, for he mistook the master's overwhelming mental condition for symptoms of a physical disease, and partly again out of wonder and devotion regarding it as an outcome of genuine divine love. And how could he remain calm and free from anxiety? For the master, carried away by the current of his newly coursing divine love, would every day bring about something strange and unexpected. One day he saw a vision of the Divine Mother within himself and seated himself on the seat for worship and employed all the articles of worship in his own honor. The previous day, so because he found Mother within himself, instead of worshipping the Mother in the external image, he started worshipping himself. So how will people understand why he did that? It was because he saw the Mother within himself, living, and so he was to worship the Mother who is inside by putting flowers, etc. on his own body. So people thought he is worshipping himself. It was something very difficult to understand. The previous day to that one, he had performed Aarti of the Universal Mother continuously for 3 long hours and made the officer of the temple restless. If you go on doing Aarti for 3 hours, who will ring the bell? And how will the lamps burn for 3 hours? Lamps, they burn only for 15 minutes or 20 minutes for the usual Aarti. So these lamps must have all gone out of light or fire. So he simply, the empty lamp without any wick, he must be waving around Mother for 3 hours. How could anybody understand why he did this? And the day before he had rolled on the ground and rubbing his face against the dust of the earth at not having realized God. Extreme anguish he expressed by rolling on the ground and rubbing his nose on the ground. Had wept so piteously that people gathered around him. Ah, how many indeed are the stories connected with different events of his life on different days that we heard from the Master. So one after another, ununderstandable problems was there connected with Sri Ramakrishna coming to the Mathur Babu. One day the Master entered a Shiva temple and began to recite the hymn on the glory of Shiva called the Mahimna Stotra. In the course of his recital, when he came gradually to the following verse, he was immediately beside himself with an ecstatic mood. What does this verse? O Lord, if the blue mountain be the ink, the ocean be the ink pot, the biggest branch of the heavenly tree be the pen, the earth the writing leaf, and taking these, if the goddess of learning herself writes for eternity, even then the limit of the virtues will not be reached. So praising of Shiva, that he has got infinite virtues. So the goddess herself cannot come to the end of it. So he was shedding tears, reciting the above verse. The master was completely beside himself. With the intense feeling in his heart of the glory of Shiva, forgot the hymn, the language of the hymn, the recitation of the verses in their order, and all the things, and cried out loudly, saying again and again, "O great God, how can I express your glory? How can I express your glory?" And tears flowed profusely from his eyes, down his cheeks, breast, and clothes, to the floor, which got wet. Something unimaginable. The servants and the officers of the temple came there running from all sides at that noise produced by weeping, the half-uttered words in a choked voice as of a madman, and that extraordinary behavior. When they saw him, Sri Ramakrishna, in that state, some were surprised and waited to see what would happen next, saying, "Oh, it is the madness of the junior Bhattacharya," said one. "I took it to be something else. I see it is very much in excess today." "Will he not," said another, "ride on the shoulder of the Shiva? Why do you say, what do you say? It is better to pull him away by the hand," and so forth. And it is needless to say that there was much merriment over it too. Some people were jesting and ridiculing Sri Ramakrishna on this incident. But the master had no consciousness of the external world at all. Merged in the feeling of the glory of Shiva, his mind had gone up very high beyond the external world, where the tainted ideas and words of the world never reach. How could therefore the words of derision and fun expressing their thoughts reach his ears? He was completely unaware. At that time, Mathur Babu was at the Kali temple. Hearing that uproar in connection with the Bhattacharya, he came there immediately. The officers hastened respectfully to make way for him. Mathur Babu came and saw the master in that mood and was at once charmed with it. When some one of the officers suggested that the master should forcibly be removed from the place where he was, that is near Shiva, he was very much annoyed and said, "Leave him alone. Let him who has a head to spare go and touch the Bhattacharya now." So Mathur was so much in favor, in support of Sri Ramakrishna, he threatened all others, "Never go near him, otherwise you will lose your heads will be off from your neck." So that is how he threatened. The officers were therefore frightened and dared not say or do anything. A little afterwards, the master regained the consciousness of the outer world, and seeing Mathur Babu standing there with the officers of the temple, he looked afraid like a boy and asked him, that is Mathur Babu, "Did I happen to do anything wrong when I had no control over myself?" Mathur saluted him and said, "No, father, you were reciting a hymn. I stood here lest someone should disturb you unthinkingly." You see, he was so kind to Sri Ramakrishna. Recalling his condition at the time of sadhana, one day the master said to us, "Those who used to come here at that time had the idea of God kindled very soon in the company of me. Two youths used to come from Baranagar. They were low by birth, maybe Kaivarta or Tamli. They were very good. They had great love and reverence for me and used to come very often. One day I was sitting with them under the Panchavati when a certain state came on one of them. I saw that his breast grew red, eyes deep red, streams of tears were rolling down. He could neither speak nor stand. He was just like one who had drunk 2 bottles of wine. That mood of his was in no way coming to an end. I was then afraid and said to the mother, "What have you done to him? Mother, people will say I have done something and brought about that condition in him. He has his father and others. He will have to go home just now." So, just by coming to the vicinity, nearness to Sri Ramakrishna, that young fellow, he just went into spiritual ecstasy of a very high kind. So that is why his chest became red and tears of joy flowed from his eyes incessantly. So that's the example that Sri Ramakrishna had his power. So much of spirituality in him, so it would overflow into others and make them also as spiritual, as ecstatic as he was for the time being. So this is an example. Then Sri Ramakrishna says, I passed my hand over his chest while I was saying so to mother. He then became somewhat calm and went home a little afterwards. We have heard from the holy mouth of the Master himself that at one time, in his infectious company, Mathur also got into a wonderful state, and his reverence and devotion increased 1,000-fold. Always indrawn and informed with the spiritual mood and oblivious of surroundings, the Master one day was pacing up and down the veranda, extending east to west to the northeast of his dwelling room. Mathur was then sitting by himself in one of the rooms of the separate house which stood between the temple and the Panchavati, and which is even now called the Babu's mansion. The place where the Master was pacing was within an easy range of vision from where Mathur was sitting. Mathur was therefore sometimes observing him walking in an indrawn mood and thinking of him, and sometimes speculating on the future trend of his own worldly affairs. So Mathur was half mind was absorbed in his worldly affairs, and now and then he would look at Sri Ramakrishna also pacing up and down. The Master was not at all conscious of the fact that Mathur was sitting in the parlor, observing him that way from time to time. And what would it have mattered even if he were conscious of it? The disparity between the domestic, social, and other conditions of the two was so great that there was no cause for either of them feeling any concern for the other. Rather, it would have been reasonable for the Master to feel hesitant and move away from the place had he known of Mathur's presence there and not been merged in that divine mood which had made him inattentive. For how could the Master, who was an ordinary, insignificant, poor temple priest, whom people knew to be foolish and mad, paying little heed to ritualistic formalities and a butt of all ridicule, help feeling hesitant in the presence of Mathur, who was a wealthy, respectable, learned and intelligent Babu gentleman, who might well be regarded as the proprietor of the temple and the whole estate of Rani, that he happened to view the Master with a benevolent eye was the only reason why the latter had not so far been driven away from the temple. So Sri Ramakrishna, otherwise he would have moved off if he were aware that Mathur Babu is looking at him from a distance. So he was just moving in his own high spiritual mood. So what happened is very interesting. But the event turned out to be something unthinkable and incomprehensible. For Mathur himself ran up in great flurry to the master, bowed down to him, clasped with his hands both the feet of the master, and started weeping. The master said, Sri Ramakrishna himself says, "What is this you are doing? You are Babu, you are gentleman, the son-in-law of the Rani. What will people think if they see you act like this? Be calm and get up." But did he give ear to it? Afterwards, when he became collected, he narrated everything without any reserve. He had a strange vision. He said, "Father, you were walking, and I saw distinctly that it was not you, but my mother Kali in the temple over there, as you were coming forward in this direction, and that it was Mahadeva himself immediately when you turned about. I thought at first that it was an optical illusion. I rubbed my eyes well and looked, but saw the same thing. This happened as often as I looked." He repeatedly said this and wept. I said, "Why? As a matter of fact, I know nothing." So simple. But would he listen? I was afraid that someone should come to know of it and tell the Rani of it. What would she think? She might perhaps say that I put a spell on him. He became calm, and when I consoled him in various ways, was it for nothing that Mathur did so much for me and loved me so much? Mother gave him many visions and experiences about me. It was in fact written in Mathur's horoscope that his chosen ideal, the Divine Mother, would be so very compassionate on him that she would assume a body, accompany and protect him wherever he went, in the form of Sri Ramakrishna. Inside Sri Ramakrishna, Mother Kali only was there, and Sri Ramakrishna almost lived as long as Mathur lived with him, and most of the time they used to be together. So it was written in horoscope of Mathur that his Ishtadevata would be with him and walking about with him, and that had been proved true. Henceforward, Mathur's faith became very firm, for it was not for the first time that he got an indication that the master was surely not an ordinary man, that the master towards whom he was attached at first sight and whose mental attitudes he would often detect and understand through others, though others condemned him without understanding, was no other than the Mother of the Universe herself, who, out of compassion for him, was residing in his body. So though others condemned Sri Ramakrishna, Mathur was sure that it the Divine Mother alone who is acting through Sri Ramakrishna. It was from this time on that he believed that the one present in the stone image in the temple had perhaps assumed a body and was accompanying him wherever he went, as it was written in his horoscope. From now on, Mathur's relation with the master became especially intimate. A great good fortune indeed smiled on Madhu. The scriptures say that not only ordinary people, but even those who have become liberated in life cannot but experience the result of actions of both kinds, good and bad, as long as their body is lost. Ordinary men experience the results of their good and bad deeds themselves. Now, who experiences the results of the good and bad works done through the body of the liberated ones? So this is the question put by the author. For the liberated ones cannot do it as much as the pride and egoism in them, which experience pleasure, the pride, pleasure and pain have forever been completely burnt. So when a man is liberated, some karma is there remaining. But who will experience the fruits of that karma? Because he has no ego at all. If you have no ego at all, you cannot experience anything. So if you do not experience, what is the good of giving you the experience of your bad and good actions in the form of joy and sorrow? So it becomes meaningless. So that question is raised. So pleasure and pain have forever been completely burned. Who then does it? Who will experience this good and bad effects of the remaining karma of the person who is liberated already? The Jivan Mukta, the living free. The results of actions again are inevitable, and some good and bad actions cannot but be performed by the bodies of persons liberated in life, till those bodies shall fall like dry leaves from trees. The scriptures say that those unliberated persons who serve and love the liberated ones enjoy the results of the good actions of the latter, and those who hate them suffer the results of their bad actions done through their bodies. So the scriptures say that the good results of the good karmas of the liberated persons will go to those people who serve him with great devotion. Those who just humiliate him or give him trouble or ridicule him, such people, they will have to enjoy or suffer the bad karma and the bad results of their karma. So the external fruits of his karma is taken over by these two types of devotees or enemies of the liberated person. Who can say how great is the result of the loving devotional service rendered to the incarnations of God when great results are attained through the service of even ordinarily liberated persons? So the author says, in the case of ordinary liberated person itself, if a person serves him with good intentions, he will get all the merits of that person which have remained unexpressed. And the bad people, they get the sorrow, etc. from that bad action by giving trouble to the liberated person. In the case of an ordinary liberated soul, it happens like this. What about the incarnations? It will be extraordinary results of good. They will get extraordinary good results who serve incarnation. Similarly, who give him trouble, so they will get very, very great difficulties and sorrows for humiliating and giving trouble to incarnation. So we shall stop here today. We will continue in our next class. Niranjanam Nityamanantarupam Bhaktanukampadhrita Vigraham Vai Ishavataram Parameshamidyam Tam Ramakrishnam Shirasanamamaha. O Ramakrishna, the taintless one, the eternal one, the one with infinite forms, the one who has assumed form for the sake of the devotees, the one incarnate Supreme Soul, the one, the adorable Lord of all, we salute Thee, moving our heads before You.